Hey there berries, welcome to patch 10.25. This is a support tier list if you were stumbling on and unaware. So this is the last scheduled patch for 2020. I believe the next patch will be and should be 11.1 unless there is something game breaking about this patch. There might always be like a B patch or maybe even a C patch to go on top of this one, but the patching schedule is 11.1 is next for next year. But I can totally see them adding a balanced patch if needed, particularly when there's a lot of changes coming in for this one across the board and multiple roles. So as always, we talk about 5 different tiers of support. The bottom 2, tier 5 and tier 4, are champions that you probably shouldn't be playing in solo queue necessarily. New champion Rell is getting released in this one, which is a tank support engagey type. We played it a lot on PBE once when she was available, but have yet to test it on live because she's not out on live yet. She's out on live on Wednesday. So having a look there at the tier 5, not a lot has changed there. Honestly, I don't think anything has changed there. So if you're familiar with my tier list, there's nothing really too much to talk about. Ivan did receive a buff, but please don't play Ivan support. And then we have a Nico as well. There's a couple of people that always mention Nico. Nico, if you want to play like an AP kind of control mage, then just play something like Zyra, who is much higher in the tier list. Spoilers. Tier 4, you've got a lot of champions there that are kind of just weak, but if you're moving into the support role and you're familiar with playing some of these champions in other roles, they definitely can sort of work out. So for example, let's have a look. So Gragas can be an okay support if you have experience playing him in the jungle. Set, if you're playing for him from the top lane, you can bring that into the support role. Maokai jungle Imperial Mandate build is a viable option. Shen, Poppy support are viable. I say that lightly, like they are viable, but once you start getting experience with the bot lane, with those type of champions, then you should be veering off into some of the more meta ones. One champion that's getting changed a lot this patch in tier 4 is Pantheon. There's a lot of different changes coming to him. So in pre-season, I think I've seen a total of 2 Pantheon supports played by the enemy, and honestly not impressed at all, and that's why he's been put into tier 4. Now there are a lot of changes. I think it meant to be geared for him to be played more as a solo laner as opposed to a support. They're removing the turret shot block capability on his E, but they are giving him some buffs across on his ulti and one or two of his other abilities. So overall, Pantheon will probably be slightly stronger in the actual lane as support, but looking at like the tower dive potential, it's going to be nearly impossible to do. So how that is going to shift his power is I'm not particularly sure, because one of Pantheon's greatest strengths was tower dives, and now that's not even a thing on him now anymore. So it's too hard to say whether he'll be tier 4. I don't think he'll be tier 5. I think it'd be between like tier 3, tier 4. Like if someone wanted to argue about tier 3 Pantheon, then yeah, I would just say yes, because I can't be bothered to argue with people. So yeah, Pantheon could potentially be in tier 3. After once we see some more gameplay potential from him. Nothing else really I want to mention there. None of those champions particularly stand out in solo queue, but we can move up into the good old tier 3, and this is where most of the juicy content starts. So we've got a few champions there, quite a few actually. So we've got Senna, Morgana, Bard, Soraka, Yuumi, Pyke, Rakan, Alistar, Xerath, Vel'Koz, Nivea up from tier 5, Zillion up from tier 4, and Nautilus up from tier 4. I should have probably added that the Morgana was tier 2 and got moved down to tier 3. So there's a few promotions there and one demotion. I feel like a lot of these champions are viable in solo queue. I have decided to move Zilean up a tier, even though his overall play rate has been extremely low. His win rate seems to be around about the 52% mark. So I have to be really careful when I add things up and down based on win ratios, because 1% play rate is extremely low, and that tells me that a lot of people playing Zilean are people that play him a lot and are experienced at him, because obviously as you play a champion more, naturally your win rate should improve over time. So it tells me that there's a dedicated Zilean player base playing Zilean, and they're doing decently with him at the moment. I can definitely see his potential with his revive and stuff like that. He always has had that potential, but honestly in the lane he always kind of feels a little bit meh. But I'm gonna keep him there just for win rate's sake, and just see if I'm comfortable with him being there at the moment. I think we should probably talk about the biggest thing in tier 3, the biggest changes in the Anivia. Anivia is getting a lot of mana quality of life changes, because tier, unless you're building Manamune, sucks. Seraph Embrace is absolutely terrible. Riot has kind of identified that, so instead of fixing Zerath's Embrace, they're just buffing champions that used to use tier and giving them better mana costs basically on abilities. So Anivia has better mana ratios now, which now actually interestingly makes her look more support viable. They're doing things like increasing the width of her wall from the very first point as well. So you've got extra utility without needing extra levels, which is very interesting. Her QE combo, which is the stun into the E, the burst extra double damage once a target has been slowed or stunned by one of your Q or your ulti. So that damage has always been quite potent, and I know there's a very hardcore small player base of Anivia mains that do play her in a support role and can sort of make it work, but I think she's legit a possibility now after that. So in terms of like what you want to play Anivia in, I think Anivia can do quite well into the enchanters. I think into tanks you'd have a lot of struggling with there. The one thing that you could maybe do is if a tank engages, say, your AD carry, you then wall off the enemy AD carry so they can't follow up as easily. But the wall placements, like in fights in general, particularly around in the jungle and those tight corridors, can be pretty good. So like mid game onwards is kind of where you're looking to do most of your crowd control. So Anivia, yeah, keep your eyes open for that one. I mean, this is a little bit of a risky one, putting her in tier 3. But I think that's like kind of, if you want to experiment with something new off meta, then Anivia support is definitely one possibility there that could show a lot of possibility going into December. As I don't want to spend too much in tier 3, I think we'll talk about the ones that have been changed. So Nautilus being moved up from tier 4 to tier 3. I think there were some complaints about how Nautilus is viable, and people were right. Nautilus is still a decent annoying champion to play against in lane. I do feel like some of the other tank supports are stronger, but if you really want to offload from November, then now's the time to do it, probably. So Morgana getting her W nerfed, so the damage on that is being reduced, and with stuff like Demonic Embrace recently getting nerfed and the Andrews being on her not really that great. One thing we haven't really touched on yet is that the support items are getting a good cost reduction, and honestly none of those items are particularly great on her. I can see some people potentially doing Moonstone Morgana, but it's probably going to be pretty oof in terms of feelings. So she's in an awkward place at the moment in terms of mythic items. So overall, tier 3. She always has generally been around a tier 3 mark pre-season 11. So yeah, Morgana's always kind of like been around this mark anyway, and just with how powerful some of those AP mythics were, did boost her up a bit, but now she's back down. And one thing I'll always mention is Senna can actually be much higher than tier 3 if you're playing with an AP carry in the bot lane, like a Swain or something like that. And talking about Swain, we're moving up into tier 2. We've got also in tier 2, we've got Blitzcrank, Brand, Karma, Lulu, Swain. Thresh, Sona, and Seraphine. Yes, I had forgotten to put Seraphine in the last couple of videos. She is now there. And unfortunately, I don't have an icon for Rell at the moment, but Rell would also be in this tier 2. So not too many changes here. Brand getting that demotion from tier 1. Kind of the same case as Morgana, not able to use those cost reduction mythics, not any of them really. You could maybe do like an Imperial Mandate Brand, but then you definitely would need a Rylai's, and then that's still an expensive build, and the only way you would be able to activate the Imperial Mandate is from your Q stun or slow procs from your ultimate, and it's not really consistent enough for that to be too viable. So he still would need to go into like a Leandry's route really. Lulu did get a slight, I'm hesitant to say buff. It's not really intended for the support role. It seems to be more of like a solo lane Lulu buff, where her Glitter Lance, her Q, will do more damage if both lasers hit the same target, but they did nerf the base damage on that though, so it's not all buffs and you know, happy smiley faces and rainbows there for Lulu players. It's a bit of a weird one, and both a buff and a nerf in one go really. And yeah, like she's still okay. I mean, Kraken Slayer 80 carries did get buffed, so she's in her crowd control and what she provides is still pretty good. But I will say though, Lulu does feel a little bit weaker going into season 11 than what she did in season 10. Other ones here, like Imperial Mandate Karma is still pretty decent. I'm not going to even say she's remotely close to tier 1. If I had a tier 2.5, I would probably be putting Karma and Seraphine in, but I think that'd be too much. I think the Seraphine and the Karma are tier 2.5. Karma Imperial Mandate is fine. Moonstone Karma is a little bit meh. Imperial Mandate being buffed, you know, in terms of like the cost reduction and requiring ally hits makes her so that her support role is slightly stronger, but she's nothing too crazy, and she fits right in between that middle mark of the tier 2 and tier 3. Same with Seraphine. Seraphine is receiving a buff this patch with the W shield is getting increased for her by, I believe, 50%. Nothing too crazy, just a little bit of quality of life for Seraphine. But the main reason why you're playing Seraphine in fights is basically the her ultimate. Yeah, her poke is quite okay, her roots are okay, but the ultimate can be potentially like game changing, ridiculously huge. But she does more than like a Tarek. Like Tarek has a game changing ult with that invulnerability, but the thing is Tarek is just generally pretty weak anyway, whereas at least Seraphine can harass a little bit during that laning phase and kind of hold her own a little bit to get to that kind of stage of popping out those awesome ultis. So yeah, I'm pretty happy with where those champions are, but yeah, Seraphine's just 2.5 really, just because you are relying on that one spell to do a lot, and you're having to maneuver in fights in order to get the best possible positioning for it. Now moving up to the tier 1, there was a slight adjustment there. Actually, before we should do that, I should probably mention Rell. I can't really just like go over that like that and just ignore her. So yes, Rell is getting released. She is the new champion coming into League of Legends for Wednesday on this 10.25 patch. So we did cover her in a few videos. Her gameplay is very similar to like Leona in terms of engaging, but Rell has a few extra tools in her kit, like breaking off shields, and some slightly different initiation sometimes. But like the overall kit is extremely, if you're a newer player and probably like not very good at mechanics, I would not be advising you to play Rell. She's definitely going to be one of the hardest supports to play, I believe, in terms of actual mechanics and trying to pay attention to what's going on in her kit. I think if you can play, if you're like the top 0.1% of Rell players, I say Rell would be better than Leona, because the extra tools that you have can be pretty damn good if you can maximize utility in everything. But what Rell provides compared to Leona, Leona's kit is much easier to understand, and honestly Leona's kit is just extremely good anyway, so it's like it's hard to say like no to Leona when she is as strong as she is at the moment. So that's just my thoughts on it. I know like some of the tank stuff has been nerfed, but I've never taken Sunfire on Leona. It's always been Aegis, and Aegis has had that cost reduction anyway. So Leona, as you'll find out in tier 1 in a second, Leona is tier 1 and will be for some time, I believe. But I think Rell is definitely the tank contender to maybe push her off that role possibility. But yes, going into tier 1, we've got Nami still there. She is still ridiculous in solo queue at the moment. Jenna I've pushed up to tier 1 as well. Zyra is still the best as she can still utilize the Imperial Mandate and Rise combo that we were talking about earlier, whereas, you know, as we mentioned before, that Brand can't. Leona, as we mentioned, best tank in the game for sure, and Lux AP as a support is also very, very good too, and can utilize the Imperial Mandate, and you don't have to pick up would not advise picking up a Rylai's on the Lux, so you can use that to buy a different item. But yeah, this is like your kind of core of tier 1. A lot of Imperial Mandate abusers there, plus the strongest tank at support in the game. I don't think too much here is too much of a surprise. But just to clarify in the Imperial Mandate, as I know there would be a few people thinking like that they thought Imperial Mandate was nerfed. So the initial hit that you do, the damage on the Imperial Mandate will go down. So Nami's E, for example, the initial hit from that won't be as high as it should be, but the allied damage bit got buffed. So, you know, we're playing support at the end of the day, and we shouldn't be really like doing 1v1s and things anyway. So overall, in the majority of the game, Imperial Mandate is going to be basically the same value for us, but cheaper. So win same, I don't know, but yeah, it's a nice change, and should help us complete that mythic as early as possible. I think every single case now you would want to buy a mythic first because of how cheap it is, and then move into whatever legendary items that you want to purchase along the way. Well, I hope this tier list helps you out. This is probably the last tier list of December, unless Riot adds in a crazy B patch or something, which sometimes they have done in the past, I think. So we might end up doing another one just before Christmas or just after. But I don't know how likely that is. But I will be spending a lot of time also on Wild Rift. If you're interested in Wild Rift on mobile, that comes out in EU on the 10th of December. Also Russia and Turkey and Oceania. If you're in NA, you're going to have to wait a little while. But while you're waiting, why don't you subscribe to the Bizzleberry Wild Rift secondary channel. And I've already uploaded over 12 Wild Rift videos on that channel, including, and one extra on the main channel as well. So lots of Wild Rift content there, and you'll be kind of surprised at how, like, the game looks better on mobile. Honestly, it's kind of crazy, and I've been having so much fun with it that I'm doing my best not to be too enticed to make it my main game, but it's definitely going to be a game that I'm going to want to spend at least 50% of the time on over these next few weeks for sure. And I'm going to be aiming to do daily uploads for that channel as well. I'm still going to make a priority for Lore PC, but not abandon you guys. But I will be making a lot of content on Wild Rift, including aiming to do tier lists similar to this. Maybe not just for support, maybe for the other roles as well, as I have been enjoying playing like champions like Malphite. It's been pretty fun. Fiora was quite fun to do. Even some of the Lee Sin jungle stuff on Wild Rift was actually pretty fun to do as well. Like there's some weird things like you W to the ground, so you can like just dash normally as Lee instead of having to need a ward to dash to, which is pretty cool. But anyway, I'm just whiffling. This has got nothing to do with the tier list. I hope you guys enjoy your winter holidays, shall we call them, and I'll hopefully see you for some videos soon on either channel, and live streaming on twitch.tv/Bizzleberry with Lore PC, Wild Rift, and I might do some Cyberpunk once it gets around Christmas time. I'll probably wait a little bit for people to do their first kind of like playthroughs through, and then I can stream without people worrying about too much about spoilers. But yeah, hope the tier list helped you out, and take care, stay safe.